Okay, the live stream is up, and here is the link in the chat.
Hey everyone, welcome, and we'll get started here in just a little bit. It looks like we're 3 minutes before starting time, so thanks for joining us today, and we'll get started with Tiago and Rodrigo in just a little bit. So. Well, today it's a nice spring day here in Iowa. Actually, it's 18 degrees C, so pretty pretty nice day. Just kind of 5 or 6 days ago, we were at below 0 C. So I'm pretty happy. But yesterday I think it got around to be 25, which is quite warm for us in the springtime. But anyway, so we're on the way with our springtime. And fall for you guys in Brazil. So. We're just kind of 2 minutes away. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll get started here in 1 or 2 minutes. So thank you again for joining. Well, where I am in Ames, Iowa, at Iowa State University, it's now 9 a.m. in the morning. I think it's 11 a.m. in Parascaba. My name's Kyle Poorman, and I'm with the Consortium for Innovation in Post-Harvest Loss and Food Waste Reduction. I'm the Communications and Policy Manager, and I'm here to welcome you to our second of 2 webinars from our friends and colleagues from Agrolog. Just a little bit about the consortium. Our goal is to preserve nutrients, improve livelihoods, and realize an efficient food system. Sorry. Just wanted to welcome you and just make everyone aware that this webinar is being recorded and live streamed. Just a little bit more about our consortium. Our consortium has 9 member institutions and 2 major funders, the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research and the Rockefeller Foundation. Additionally, each of our members also brings its own funds to the consortium. So thank you to our members and funders. Along with our members, we also have a set of consortium collaborators that we also work with, and those range from large and small NGOs, private businesses, universities, and other entities. We have a range of people that we're working with throughout the world. So without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to my friend and colleague, Tiago, who will have one of two presentations today. The other presentation will be from Rodrigo, Tiago's presentation will be on the modal share and implications for post-harvest losses in the Brazilian grain supply chain. Tiago, are you ready? I'm gonna stop sharing here and turn it over to you.
Okay. So can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it. Looks great, Tiago.
Okay, nice. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Brazil. I hope everything is fine with you and your family. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about our research here at the Agrologistics Group. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Professor Dirk, Kyle, Nicholas, and Iowa State University for organizing the event and inviting us to participate. Today, I'm talking a little bit about Brazil modal share and post-harvest losses implications in grains supply chain. In this way, speaking a little about myself, my name is Thiago Guilherme Pera. I am technical coordinator here at the Agrologistics Group, University of São Paulo in Brazil. My research area has been the use of mathematical models applying agri-food supply chain, specifically involving agri-food supply chain, mathematical programming, multi-criteria optimization, multi-objective optimization, and recently I have a little work with agent-based simulation and dynamic system simulation. So in this line, I'd like to divide the presentation in two parts. Yeah, in the first part, I'd like to talk about Brazil modal share analysis for corn and soybean implication to Brazilian competitiveness, specifically trying to answer two major questions. Is Brazil competitive in grains logistics in relation to the United States? And what are the implications of Brazil modal share for competitiveness? And finally, you'd like to conclude this part with the presentation of some activities that we have together with the United States Department of Agriculture. Examples of reports can be useful. In the second part, I will talk about grains post-harvest losses in Brazil, specifically involving logistical activities. I'd like to demystify three great pre-concepts about losses in Brazil, which I can only review at the end of this presentation. So hold your horses for now. Specifically in this part, I'd like to speak how much does Brazil lose in grain logistics? Who is the great villain of losses in logistics systems in Brazil? And is multimodality really a great salvation for the problems of losses in logistics? And finally, I'd like to talk about some trade-offs involving losses making decisions in logistics. So, before we start the discussion about modal share, I'd like to share a brief contextualization. The largest customer of Brazil in agribusiness is China. Yeah, and this map illustrates transport flows between producing region and ports and from cheese to the China. Yeah. Okay, in terms of soy production, almost half of we produce is export to China. This figure illustrates this very well. In pink, we have the evolution of our production. In green, we have the export of soy to China. And in blue, we have the export of soy to other countries. Basically, we have that almost 50% of our production is exported, while the rest supply of domestic market, mainly animal feed production industries. Our transportation radius in the last 2 years has been increasing due to the expansion of grain production areas in Brazil. In this line, Brazil is a country of continental dimension that presents a deficiency of transportation infrastructure. This figure illustrates our transportation infrastructure very well. We have a few railways and waterways lines concentrated in regions of grain production and directed to export. We don't have expressive passenger transport by rail in the country. The longest rail corridor in Brazil connects the state of Mato Grosso, which is the largest grain producer, and there is a highlight in the map, to the port of Santos. Santos is the largest port in Brazil, covering around 1,500 kilometers. In terms of waterway, the largest volume we have involves the northern region close to the Amazon region. Now let's compare the cost of transportation from the farm to China in two major soy production regions in the world: Iowa in the United States and Mato Grosso in Brazil, involving both inland and maritime transportation. We know the price of soybeans is formed in the international market, based in Chicago. In this way, competitiveness depends on the cost of production and the logistical cost. In this line, Iowa, for example, has a cost to the port of Shanghai of almost $65 per ton, while the Brazilian producer in Mato Grosso has a cost of around $120 per ton, a huge difference. And the loss of competitiveness is due to the high cost of transportation from Brazil in relation to US. We have more than twice the cost of inland transportation. And why it happens? There are many causes of this difference, but the main one is our high dependence on truck transportation. And that is why our study with the USDA enters. We don't have an official data source in Brazil that says how many percent of our production or export occurs by truck, by barge, by rail. So we made a cooperation agreement to study for 1 year the creation of a methodology to quantify the modal share of soy and corn in Brazil and to analyze this change in the last decade so that we can have some comparisons with other countries. For example, in this figure, we can compare Brazil modal share for soy export and United States modal share for soy exports too. The big difference we have is that here about half of our exports occur by trucks, involve long distance. In the US, more than half occur by barge. Another important fact in this research is the short distance movements between the farms and the multimodal terminals by truck. In the US, for example, the distance of the short haul truck is 100 miles, while in Brazil, it exceeds 500 miles. As we have a few terminals in Brazil. So this table summarizes the results about the modal share of corn and soybeans in Brazil in the period from 2010 to 2019. We analyzed the modal share of production, export, and the domestic market. In this line, what we have seen, the modal share in relation to production showed diversification with a reduction in dependence on trucks. On the other hand, for export, we have increased the dependence on trucks for both products. This reflects the high volume of exports in the period that tripled in the last decade. Our export volume have been greater than the capacity growth of the rail and barge, so we have been more on the truck, and this is not good. As I comment, it significantly increases our logistical costs and we lose competitiveness. Brazil's strategic plan is to increase our rail and barge transport capacity by more than our production in order to reduce dependence on trucks, mainly in long-haul movements. So, in addition, we need to improve our roads too. Yeah, we have many bottlenecks to be overcome. This figure illustrates some roads in Brazil for soybean movements. Okay, the modal share report is available at the Agrologistics and USDA website, or you can download this using the QR code in the presentation. In addition, we have a cooperation agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture since 2004, in which we have basically quantified the transportation cost of main producing region to the China and Europe through market research here at the Agrologistics Group. These reports are available on the USDA website. We have two types of reports, the Brazil Soybean Transportation and Soybean Transportation Guide. Yeah. And if you are interested in knowing more about logistics in Brazil, we recently published a chapter for a book on the Brazil and China partnership, which talks about Brazil Agrologistics for beginners. It's available in our website, and you can download this using the QR code. So, now I'd like to talk about the second part 2. Yeah, specifically our study on losses modeling in grain supply chain in Brazil. In this way, I begin by asking, what is the contribution of logistics to food security? What we expect from logistics is that it has zero loss. That is, the amount produced by the farmer is exactly the same amount processed or exported. There is no loss in all logistics activities involved transportation and storage. So the contribution of logistics is to stabilize the supply of products along the supply chain at the lowest possible cost, at the lowest possible loss level, and the desired quality. Yeah. Okay. To understand my study, definition that I adopt of loss is as follows. Yeah, and loss in this research refers to the mass losses of all transport and storage logistics activities from the post-harvest stage to the final destination within the national territory and before processing or consumption. That is, I don't consider the loss in the harvest in the study. So I ask you a question, yeah? How much is the loss in grain logistics in Brazil as a percent in relation to production? You can estimate it, no problem. Every time I ask this question in lectures or classes here, the typical answer is 30% loss. This number was released in the Brazilian media a few years ago, but it's wrong. Yeah, we didn't lose all of that in logistics. So in this way, we have done several studies here. I share two of studies involving grain post-harvest losses. The first was the modeling of losses across the supply chain. This figure in the right presents the logistical network using for the modeling, mapping the flows of movements of corn and soy from the farmer through warehouses in on-farm storage level and off-farm storage level, from these to multimodal terminals until reach consumer centers, which can be industries or in the domestic market or ports in the case of export. In addition to the road transport flows that move directly from the farmers to the final destination. Yeah. In total, we mapped 14 types of transport flows, as you can see in the table, including road, rail, barge transportation, warehouses, on-farm and off-farm storage, transshipment movements, and storage at the port terminals. Okay, along this line, I built a mathematical program model to simulate the movements of soybeans and corn through Brazil supply chain and quantify the loss, taking account several features such as production by region, export by port, transportation costs, storage capacity by region, relative losses for each link in the network, among others. The purpose of the model was to minimize the total logistical cost of the cheapest supply chain. The data used on losses for modeling purposes came from two sources. The first was a questionnaire applied to transport and shippers, and the second was a literature review of loss indicators for these activities in Brazil. So here we have some results involving the dimension of losses in Brazil for soybeans and corn in the general aggregate for the year 2015. The first results we can see is the total physical losses of soybean and corn in this period was 2,300,000 tons, with a total of 1,300,000 for corn and almost 1 million tons for soy. In terms of relative losses, what is the relative loss in relation to the production? Yeah, we had a losses in the order of 1.3% of the production for grains. You see now, this number is very different from the third person that people usually talk about in Brazil. Yeah. So we also estimate the economic cost of the losses, which was $600 million. 95% was related to the opportunity cost with lost sales, and the remainder with unnecessary logistical expenses. What is that? For example, unnecessary logistical expenses is the amount paid for you to move a product from the farm to the port which arrives at the port and is lost in the port. Yeah. In addition, we also estimate the environmental expenditure measured in greenhouse gas emission. Yeah. In this case, we had an emission of almost 40,000 tons of CO2, more to move products that were lost due to unnecessary fuel consumption along the supply chain. Yeah. So, and here we have one more interesting result. It is the participation of which logistical activity in the losses. We can see that 13% of losses occur by roads in Brazil. Yeah, 80% by multimodal railway. What is multimodal railway? Is an integration between roads and rail. Almost 2% by multimodal waterway. What is multimodal waterway? Is an integration between roads and waterway. 90% at port terminals, 21% in transport from farms to off-farm warehouses, and the remaining for storage. In this line, we can observe that the road transport is not the big villain in the losses in Brazil, but the storage activity is. Yeah, if we add on-farm and off-farm storage, more than 45% of losses occur through storage directly. Indirectly, we have transportation from the farmers to the off-farm warehouses, which accounted for 21% of the losses. Adding the direct and indirect effect, more than 60% of the loss occur due to the storage. Okay, in the study, what was possible to calculate the loss for each production state in Brazil, I will not have time to discuss this information, but I can share this material with you. Now we also did some scenario simulations. Yeah. The first one was to assess the impact of loss reduction based on the increase of on-farm storage capacity in the Brazilian storage system. In other words, we are only testing a migration of off-farm storage capacity to on-farm storage capacity in the grain system. Yeah, we have in Brazil a lack of storage capacity for our grain production. We were able to store around 70% of our production. If only 16% of the storage capacity at farm level, very different from US, for example. In US has a storage capacity of 150% in relation to production, and also more than half of the storage capacity in on-farm level. Yeah. So the result of simulation shows that there is a potential for loss reduction of around 21% in relation to current scenario, with only 15% of storage capacity in on-farm level. This is due to the fact that we reduce the losses that occur in road transport from the farmer to the off-farm warehouses, which has a high level of loss due to the poor conditions of the unpaved road and all the trucks used in this kind of flow. Yeah. Here are some figures that illustrate a problem we have in Brazil. It's very common to see in July, yeah, the open sky storage in Brazil when we have the harvest of the second corn crop, and we no longer have a storage capacity more, creating a lot of logistical bottlenecks and losses, yeah, because we have a lack of storage capacity. Okay, in the second simulation, we analyze the potential of loss reduction with improvements in road condition in Brazil. Yeah, in this line, if Brazil invests in improvement of all the roads used for transport grains, the potential for loss reduction is around 16% in relation to the base scenario. So we know we have entered the second model of analysis. This analysis is a part of a working paper that we are doing. Here, the objective was to create an average loss index according to the features of agrologistics to be selected by the decision maker involving 4 decisions. Yeah, the first decision is to define 2-star or not 2-star. If so, select if it's on-farm storage level or off-farm storage. Of course, this will depend if there is our houses on the on-farm level. The second decision is to define if the transport will be only by road or multimodal, that is, integration of road with railways or waterways. The third decision is to define the itinerary of the trip to identify if the road condition is good or not good. And the last one is the decision to define the type of destination, if it is a domestic market or a port. So, as you can see, we present in the table all possible combination of decision and losses for each one. We actually generate a loss menu according to the selected logistics. In this case, for example, the agrologistics that generating the worst level of losses is that which use off-farm storage, roads with not good quality conditions, multimodality, and the final destination as a port. The level of loss in this logistics is 2.3%. On the other hand, the logistics that generates the best level of losses are tools that don't use our houses, use only one mode transportation with good quality road conditions, and the destination is the domestic market. The level of loss is 0.132%. So we create a model based on the table to measure in aggregate the binary effects of each decision. In this line, for example, when we opted for multimodality, we increased our level of loss by 0.450% in relation to unimodality. And why it happened? Why this happens? Yeah. In this case, this figure illustrates this very well. We have on the left side the multimodal grain export agrologistics. In this case, we have 6 loss factors. The loss in transportation from the farmer to warehouses, the loss of storage, the loss of road transport from the warehouse to multimodal terminal, the loss by rail, and the loss at the port. Yeah. In the figure on the right, when there isn't multimodality, we have reductions in operations. In this case, only 4 factors generate losses. For this reason, multimodality increases the level of losses in the grain supply chain. So, to finish, the main lessons learned from the work carried out is the first is the discussion of relative losses and the total losses. As I commented at the beginning, the relative losses are not high in Brazil grain supply chain. But as we produce more than 200 million tons, the total losses are high and generate an economic cost of more than $600 million a year. Losses must be overlooked. As we say here, I don't know if you know that term, grain by grain, the hen feels her crop. Yeah. Another important point is that the big villain of the losses is not road transportation, but the storage activity. We lost a lot in our storage activity. We have to improve our storage system. And finally, multimodality generates a trade-off in logistics. Increasing the use of rail and barge, we have a reduction of the logistical cost, but we have an increase in our loss, in our grain losses. How to solve this problem? Yeah, incorporating the decision maker that the loss is a kind of cost. Yeah, and what are the ways to mitigate losses in agrologistics in Brazil? Renovation of country structure flats, which is very old, professional training, improvement in road conditionals, improvement in management and technical coefficients in our operations. If you want to know more about the subject, we have a published article that discusses a comparison of losses between Brazil and United States, specifically for transportation. Yeah. And we recently published 2 chapters of a book in this year about losses organized by Minister of Agriculture in Brazil, specifically the National Supply Company. So I also leave my contacts. If you want to talk about some research or request some information, please let me know. I will be happy to help you if something. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tiago. I think that was very comprehensive and an excellent presentation. Feel free to write your questions in the chat right now. We will have a question and answer session, or chat or Q&A function. We will have a question and answer session afterwards, but we'll head to our next presentation from Rodrigo right now. Are you ready, Rodrigo?
Yes, Kyle, I'm ready.
Go ahead.
I'll share my screen. Okay. All right, screen shared. Can you see the whole screen, the full screen?
Looks good. Great.
Okay. So first of all, thank you everyone of the consortium, of the members. Thank you everybody present here watching this presentation. I would like to present a relevant theme and a topic that we study here in Zalklog. It's about the ethanol logistics in Brazil. I would like to give you guys an overview, present a few challenges and some future directions that most efforts we are making to get there to help us to mitigate those challenges. Just introducing a little bit about me. My name is Rodrigo de Moraes Santos. I'm a researcher at Exalc-Log. I am taking my master's, academic master's in University of São Paulo at production engineer field. And here's my email for future context, in case you have any future doubts and other subjects. I'm totally open to talk. I would like to show the four main topics I would like to abord in this presentation. First of all, I would like to introduce you about why ethanol, why I'm talking about ethanol, bring you a quick view about the biofuel, what are those main benefits. Second, I would like to introduce you guys about the price challenge. That's one reason why everybody does not use it today in Brazil. And the third point, I would like to introduce you about how the ethanol logistics in Brazil works, and for a few directions, what we're doing to improve the logistics and the price challenge. So first of all, I would like to introduce you about the Brazil's fleet composition. This data is about January of 2021. It's data from the Natran. And as you can see in those pie charts, most of the vehicles in Brazil today, around 46%, are moved, are fueled exclusively with gasoline. And the second most representative fleet type is the flex fuel vehicles. Okay, so are the cars that can opt, or they can use gasoline, or they can use ethanol as a fuel option. Okay, and we have a little share, about 4.26% of cars that uses only ethanol as a fuel. Okay, so we have a little share of ethanol users, and around 41% of the high school that are potential users for the biofuel. Okay? They are flex, so we are not sure about what fuel will the consumer choose. Second point for this introduction, I would like to give you a few pictures of how ethanol is produced here in Brazil. Okay, so the biofuel is produced in sugarcane or flax mills, and I say flax because now in recent years we're using corn as a production source, but most of the production of the biofuel is from sugarcane. Okay? Brazil uses sugarcane since it's been like hundreds of years, and it's a very traditional culture. But recently, we are having mills that can use the corn to produce ethanol as an alternative of sugarcane. In fact, we have a few regions where corn is very cheap, and it's very economically viable to produce ethanol using the grain. Okay, and what types of ethanol can be produced from sugarcane or corn? We have the hydrous ethanol that's used directly for fuel purpose. So when I go to the retail level with my car, and I wanna fuel it with ethanol, and I choose gasoline or ethanol, assuming I have a flex fuel car. When I say fill it up with ethanol, they are using the hydrous type. And we have the anhydrous ethanol too, that's used to blend, that's mixed with the gasoline A type. Just to get you up to the concept, we have two types of gasoline in the production process. We have the gasoline A, and we have the gasoline C type. Gasoline A is produced from the refineries of Petrobras, the most player of Brazil today, and then it's blended with anhydrous ethanol to get the gasoline C type. So when I go to the retail level, and I wanna put gasoline in my car using the gasoline C type. In fact, if you have an increase in the demand of gasoline C, we also have an increase in the anhydrous ethanol demand. Okay, but in fact, we have like a competition of biofuels in the flex fuel vehicles. So when we have when we have a decrease of gasoline demand for any reasons, the production of hydrous ethanol increases, and then we have an increase in gasoline demand. We have an increase in anhydrous ethanol production. So the mill can choose whatever type of ethanol they will produce, following up the market trends, the demand for gasoline or the demand for hydrous ethanol. But why should use ethanol? Why is it a good thing for our country? And the first reason is about the environmental reasons. In the environmental field, ethanol is a mostly eco-friendly fuel. As you can see, when we look at the emission of CO2 per liter, we see that ethanol emits 1.44 kilograms of CO2 at each liter used by the cars. And for gasoline, it's around 2.28. And for diesel, the fuel that's used in the heavy fleet, it's about 2.8 kilograms of CO2 per liter. So in the environmental aspect, it's good to use ethanol in comparison to gasoline and diesel, the fossil fuels. And also that the Brazilian government had a few commitments of reducing the CO2 emission, and it's very interesting to improve to increase the amount of ethanol used by the Brazilian people, and there's a possibility to attack the flex fuel vehicles to make them use most ethanol in comparison of gasoline. So we have economical reason at consumer level. Here showing you the price in Brazilian reais per liter for ethanol, hydrous ethanol and gasoline C type. And as you can see, since 2001, we had the level of ethanol price above the gasoline price during the whole series. But as you can see, in a few years, the price of gasoline roses and the price of ethanol falls down, like from 2003 and 2005. And another moments, as you can see, the price of ethanol rise more than the gasoline price. So this really impacts in the consumer decision. What we look at when we're going to fuel our cars is the price relation. Okay, so here is the main points when we compare the price. Okay, in Brazil, we use the 70% rule for comparing the both fuels. As you can see in the pointing line here, is the technical relation of ethanol gasoline price. So we can say when the price of ethanol divided by the price of gasoline is above 70%, we have we use more ethanol in comparison of gasoline, and when it's up 70%, we use more gasoline. As you can see here, when the relation is up to 70% at those moments, we have a decrease of ethanol consumption. So if we really want to make consumers use more ethanol, we need to make a few efforts to drop the price of the biofuel. And about the price composition, what are the main components? So we have first the price at mill. It's actually the most important thing. A few regions of Brazil have a price at mill level lower in comparison of other states, and a principal action that we can take to reduce the price at mills is to increase production and productivity. So we have taxes, federal and state taxes, and then I know it's a very polemic theme, it's a very polemic point, but if we had taxes reduction, we would have a lower price at retail level. And we have logistics costs like storage and transportation. And what we can do to attack it is investments in transportation modes and flow optimization planning to transport the product at the minimum freight as possible. And we have the agent's profit, okay, like the retail or the distributors or the mills. And we believe that if you have an increase in the competition between the agents, they are mostly forced to operate in a lower profit range. Okay, but what's the main point of the presentation is the logistics costs, and here's a few things we can do to attack it. So how the ethanol logistics in Brazil works today? Okay, so first we have a mill, and the mill by the Brazilian laws it has to send ethanol to distributors, and it can be made by different transportation modes like road, pipe, railway, or waterways. But the road transport's the mainly used today. And from the distributors, it goes to the retail level. By law, we can't transport ethanol from mill to the retail level. It has to pass to a distributor before. And it's a very polemic theme. It has been discussed a lot of times. And it may reduce transportation costs, but involves a lot of factors that are still in legal tramitation. But it might be a trend to the future. But today we have the flow mill, distributor, retail for all the flows of ethanol. It's called the delivery flow. Okay, when we do this, mill, distributor, and retail. And also we have what we call transference flow. That's when a distributor sends ethanol to another distributor, and then it goes to the retail level. It occurs mostly because we have a few stock planning. So I am a distributor and I'm getting full of stocks, and I have another distributor when I need to refill, so I can transport them. A few reasons, but it's a flow that happens. It's a process. It's around 20% of the total transportation flow. And each of them, we have transportation costs and storage costs. Okay, and when we sum up all of this, we have the network total logistics costs. Okay, and when we think about our price composition model, the network total logistics costs, it has a direct impact at the price of ethanol at retail level, and it affects the consumption mainly this way. If we increase the total network's logistics costs, we have an increase of price at retail level, and consequently we may drop the consumption. Of course, we need to compare the gasoline price too, but in general, if you pay more to the ethanol to get to the retail level, the price will rise, and then the consumer may want to choose the gasoline instead. And the opposite is true. If we made an effort to decrease our network total logistics costs, we may decrease the price at retail level, and we can stimulate the consumption in the most of cases. And here, I want to show you guys what's the big logistic problem here in Brazil, is that around 95% of ethanol production is here in what we call the South Center region. It includes the states of Mato Grosso, Goiás, Mato Grosso do Sul, São Paulo, and Minas Gerais. That's because of climate reasons. That it's a better place to cultivate sugarcane and corn. And most of the mills are concentrated in this region. And in the red dots, we have the demand. So as we have bigger dots, we have a bigger demand for the ethanol. And as we can see, we have a few points of demand that are like far away from the center of production. So when we have to transport ethanol from the center of Brazil to the other regions that are far away, and it gives us a high logistics costs. Okay, so the problem here is that we have longer transportation routes that leads to an increase in the price at the retail level, mostly in those regions far away from the production center. And in those, we have a decrease of the consumption. In those regions, we have the consumers use more gasoline than ethanol. And that's a point that's where we can bring ethanol more competitive and stimulates the consumption instead of gasoline. And here's a few efforts we're making to make ethanol more competitive. Here's what we call the malha logum. It's a pipe mode of transportation. And we have a few studies, have a few investments that are being made to expand the pipe transportation. So in comparisons of other transportation modes like waterways, railways, and roads, the pipe one is the most cheaper and also the fastest. So it's very good for the ethanol logistics in terms of costs and time. And here's the next expansion, next predicted expansion is from terminal from Itumbiara here in the state of Goiás to the terminal of Uberaba here in the state of Minas Gerais. So we have the expansion of all the malha logum that it can improve the flow of ethanol from the center of Brazil to the southeast region. That is a region with the most production, but it has the higher demand from the product. So the region has a deficit, and the ethanol needs to come from other states to fulfill this deficit. And the expansion of malha logum, it's a way to make this in a cheaper way. Okay, so we have other logistical actions is the increase of cabotage transportation. Cabotage is the transport by ship from in the same country. So as you can see here, we have a few terminals where the ship can be loaded, and a flow with a very increasing demand these days is from the state of São Paulo here in the South Center region to the northeast states that have a higher demand for ethanol but a lower production. So we are bringing ethanol from the the south center to the north of the country, and at a cheaper transportation cost. And this can bring more competitiveness to ethanol in comparison to road transportation. If I had to transport the ethanol from the center of Brazil, south center, to the north or the northeast states, the cost is very expensive. So the product will get there with a higher price, and people will choose gasoline instead of it. And another thing that is being discussed in the federal law level is the flexibilization of the transportation network. So in the black lines here, we see the flow as it is today. So it came from a mill, go to a distributor, and then to the retail level. And then the red flow here, the red lines, it's the flexibilization option. So we are discussing it in legal terms, but it may bring a cost reduction of transport of ethanol to the retail levels that are closer to the mills and far away from distributors. And there is another actions that are being made, especially to stimulate production, is the increase of ethanol from corn. We have an increased number of mills, of flex mills, or just corn mills, mainly in the center of Brazil, where we have a higher production of corn, that are producing ethanol. So by this, we increase the offer, and then we can make it at lower prices, considering market prices. And then we have the RenovaBio program. It's a recent program that was created to stimulate a more eco-friendly production process. So I am a mill, and I'm into the RenovaBio program. The less I emit of CO2 from my production process, I can negotiate this credit, and I can get money with it. So it's a financial stimulus for getting the production process more eco-friendly to reduce the emission of CO2, and also stimulates the production of ethanol, as the mills can get money in this program by selling ethanol, and the distributor can get money by selling ethanol. And this may stimulate the sales, and also increase the offer and reduce the price at the retail level. So thank you. I think that's it. I'll be there to answer any questions. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rodrigo. It's 10 o'clock, so we'll go. We'll have a question and answer session. So we'll go over a little bit of our allotted time, maybe 10 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes. So we'll open up the floor to anyone asking questions in the chat or in the question and answer function. I don't see anything right now, so I'll just start off by asking a question to Tiago. You kind of referenced before that there was a popular media idea that there was a 30% loss of grain, post-harvest grain, but you actually found that it was much lower already, right? So even without those, so do you see any issue with that number or that idea being out there, that there are quite high losses of grain when actually there, by your data, there aren't? So if you want to talk to that point.
Okay, so we did a lot of studies a few years ago about grain losses in Brazil. And in the grain losses, we have some problems to solve. Yeah, for example, uh, the shippers were suffering from economic problem with the losses. In Brazil, when soybeans and corn are exported, no tax is paid by law. Yeah, but there is the payment of the taxes if there is a loss in the process, because the difference in weight between origin and port can be understood by the government as a sale in the domestic market, and there is a tax. So at the time, we made several reports showing that there are losses in grains logistics, and the losses are not so high than the people expected. And I think the mainly causes of this is because there is an economic penalty, uh, because the cheaper has an incentive to reduce losses in grain logistics in Brazil, especially in transportation, because of the taxes.
Okay, all right. And I see there's a question from Ricardo Bartosik from INTA in Argentina, and he's asking about what are the most important causes of in storage, basically. What are the most important causes of losses during storage? Is it insects, moisture content, poor management? What are those losses?
Okay, in the storage level, we have a lot of losses in qualitative level, yeah. But for physical losses, we have, I think, four factors of losses. In the loading of the operations, the trucks pass over the grain, normally in the loading and unloading operation at the terminals, at the warehouses. The lack of basic clearing protocols. If you see in stores in Brazil, we have grains in all the parts of the warehouses. Yeah, the lack of adequate professional qualification to manage the warehouses, and in fact, storage with high humidity can also occur. Yeah, I think it's not a huge problem in Brazil, because we export a lot, and we have to standard the humidity for the exportation. Yeah, but the insect is a problem for quality grain, for the quality of the grain.
Okay, thanks for the question, Ricardo and Tiago, for the answer. And Rodrigo, I just want to I saw in a part of your presentation you were kind of delineating the kind of CO2 emissions per fuel type. Um, does that take into account the kind of the efficiency of how far a liter of gas might take a car, right? Because that so the argument of 1 liter of ethanol, is that 1 liter of ethanol equal to 1 liter of gasoline, and the kind of the CO2 emissions, if that, obviously the running of cars is quite different between models, but in general, that might be something that you think about presenting. But have you thought about that?
Oh yes, the number there doesn't take in account the efficiency of both fuels, but I've made a quick account before a few days before the presentation. And if you consider the 70% rule, it's also, as you can say, you need more liters of ethanol to walk the same distance as the gasoline. You also have less CO2 emissions when you compare both. So even considering the efficiency, the CO2 emission is lower. And there is another thing that's not taking account in this number is the emissions of the production process and the source of those fuels. Ethanol sources are renewable sources, and the gasoline source is a non-renewable source, that's the oil. So I think I don't think it's the case, but if we run out of oil in the world, we won't be able to produce gasoline from the source. But as the source of ethanol is renewable, we can, in theory, also keep producing it. So it's a very good thing to stimulate its consumption because of the renewable source too.
Great. I know in the United States, and actually where I'm from, the corn ethanol industry is quite a large industry, but it's definitely dependent upon federal regulations federal regulations of the amount used. Also, kind of its byproducts, selling of its byproducts is also a big part of how those people make money now. So I don't know if is the kind of the industry, talk a little bit more about the industry, I guess, in Brazil and how it relates to the government, and also kind of the byproducts that it may sell. I don't know if the byproducts from sugarcane are also sold for some type of after the kind of this distilling process.
Oh, okay. Also, from what I know is that the corn ethanol industry in the US is pretty more stronger than in Brazil. In Brazil, we have a babe corn industry, ethanol corn industry. But we have sub-products that can be obtained from the production process. Like in corn, we have how can I say that? We have a sub-product that can be used for animal feeding.
Yep.
And then it's a good point, as we have a huge demand for animal feeding in Brazil, so it can help this other sector. And from sugarcane, we can produce we can use the rest of the sugarcane to produce electrical energy. So it's a renewable source of energy too, to be used in houses, for industrial purpose. So that's kind of sub products that can be obtained from those both sources of ethanol production. And about the regulation, historically the sugarcane sector in Brazil is very high regulated, and we had a lot of governmental interferences in the sector, in part to help the sector to survive in a fuel crisis, in part in regulation and taxes. So it's very, very regulated. The one example is the distributor flow, that's it's obligated to pass to a distributor. So if you look at transportation costs to a few regions, it's not economical, but the law says you have to pass to a distributor for any reasons, and then it has to be done. It's done today. And it's been a few discussions, like the flexibilization of the flow, that will reduce the interference of the state. But it's I don't know if it's gonna pass, if it's gonna be approved. But there's another interference, legal interferences in the sector that affects a lot of production process and a lot of actions from the agents.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rodrigo. Tiago, I just want to, you've kind of showed kind of the modal share kind of changes over time, right? What do you, if you're looking into the future, what do you see as the kind of the changes in the kind of grain production modal share in the future? What do you think will happen, or what do you kind of what is the trajectory of how grain will be transported in the future, I would say?
Yes, your question is very good. I think in the future we will be more on the road if we not create more rail and waterway in the system, because in the last years, as we can see, our production increased more than our infrastructure capacity to transport grains in the system. It's create more and more logistical bottlenecks in the system. And the strategy here is to create more multimodal capacity. The growth of the multimodal capacity must be more than the production capacity. I think is the key. But I am not comfortable to say that it is a fact to be occur in the future. Yeah, because we have a lot of problem to investments in infrastructure in Brazil, as Fernando showed 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Well, great. I have really want to thank both of you, Rodrigo and Tiago, for these excellent presentations. I also want to thank the the participants of this webinar and this series, this kind of mini series with the Zolculog. We learned so much about the kind of the Brazilian agrologistics infrastructure. And so I want to thank you guys and thank Zolculog. It's now 10:15 where I'm from. We went 15 minutes over time, which is kind of par for the course for us. But thanks everyone for coming. And again, thank you to the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research and the Rockefeller Foundation for their grants to the Consortium for Innovation in Post-Harvest Loss and Food Waste Reduction. The consortium has a monthly webinar series. We don't have next month's webinar yet up, but I'm sure you will be receiving some information from us quite soon about who that will be and when it will be. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.